CJ, I'm happy to let people in while you're taking the first slide, if that's helpful. Can do
Okay.
that.
Okay. I thought Barb was doing the slide. We're being recorded now. Hello, welcome everybody to October's Community of Practice. We will again go over the, I am CJ Webb. And we're going to go over the rice culture. We have some regional spotlights we want to go over, as well as some PREETS resources, as well as we will have questions and answers that please put them in chat. All questions are really important and we value all them. When you do put your question in chat, it would be really helpful to put the school or area you're from to make sure that we can also have the youth service coordinator for your area addressing those questions as best as possible. We'll be doing those at the end, and those will not be recorded. We also just want to recognize that vocabulary from region to region is varied, and also please, whenever you have a question, if you're ever in doubt, please reach out to your youth service coordinator. Michelle Markle, you have something.
Yes, just a reminder, everyone, this is Michelle Markle, the youth manager. In talking with the team, I asked that we not address approval denial questions here in this forum. I think it confuses people. So our questions in the community of practices is a learning forum. So it can be about process, it can be about ideas, resources, it can be about the dashboard, but it confuses everyone when we try to answer individual approval and denial questions because they're so context specific. So this is also just an ask to please do ask those questions. Ask them of your youth service coordinator. Even if you put them in here, then the youth service coordinator could get back to you, but I've asked them not to answer those questions in this forum because it just confuses folks. So that's all.
Thank you, Michelle.
All right, for our RISE culture, the interconnected communities. This is by building the RISE element, we better are able to build interconnected communities with our teams, organizations, and communities where we are linked and we share goals and collaborate. So some things to think about and ways to collaborate is we can share a successful interaction or outcome with a colleague or team, can embrace opportunities to connect with others and discover shared interests. So it's always important that we all connect with each other as often as possible, and also talk about those shared goals so that we can all move forward together. All right, next slide.
So we wanted to highlight in our PREETS Spotlight this month some regional resources in the area of quality proof of service. So wanted to just give you some examples of the things that have come through the dashboard that have been really great and have been helpful in delivering PREETS to students. The first one came through the dashboard in the area of job exploration counseling. It's a simple table that was created by a transition specialist to keep track of all the places that students had applied and were wanting to apply to, and really painted a picture of how the student was following up with different employers and being able to support the student and being mindful of dates and check-ins. And so that was something that is, not super complex, but super helpful to the student and the transition specialist. At the end of the COP, these documents will be emailed to you from your youth service coordinator, the original attachments that you are welcome to use. If you have questions about this specific one, feel free to put it in the chat, and then we can talk about it at the end. The next one comes from NTAC-C from T-Folio. This is what a youth service, what a contractor used to really help a student map out the classes that they needed to take in high school and how that might relate to their post-secondary goal. And so this came from a resource that's free and available through NTAC-C that you can use with your students. It even has a sheet where you can track the different PREA activities that students have done and are working towards completing. And that link will also be emailed to you from your service coordinator. The next one is a resource that was used for workplace readiness training. It was a goal breakdown sheet where the student's career goal was placed inside the long-term goal box, and then mini goals and action steps towards those goals were placed inside as well. And this helped the transition specialist and the student with goal setting and also celebrating those individual smaller successes as the students reaching, those micro steps on their way up to the bigger goal. This was handed down from a transition specialist to another transition specialist, but there's lots of templates like this available at the NTAC-C website and in other locations as well. This one is a youth transition student plan. It can be used in a variety of ways. It could be used while you're getting to know a student, having discussions and working on planning and goal setting. It can also be used when you're supporting a student throughout a PREA process, and could be under, job exploration counseling or self-advocacy. This could be used as a direct service and could really help you kind of get an idea of where the students' PREA requests lie. What are they really wanting to do, and what resources might they have? Please. And then I'm going to turn over to Michelle Markle for a Weeble Spotlight.
Weeble Spotlight. Woo! Okay, so we, context-wise, Weeble is interesting because we've got Weeble as its own PREA, and then some contracts have Weeble wages. Weeble is work-based learning experience, if anybody brand new is on today. And they're separate little processes within our contract that are very, very, very important. Okay, so I'm going to back up for everybody because we're talking about contracts from RSA. In my mind, they are about the services, but they're about the spending, right? So we in VR have been under what's called a corrective action plan. We still are under corrective action plan. RSA monitors us regularly. We have a monitoring team looking at all the things we're doing and giving support and giving feedback. And the standard that we have in VR for all of our spending, the acronym is DRAN. So for every dollar spent, is it documented? How we spent it, why we spent it, the justification for the spending of it. Is it documented, and not just documented, but is it documented well enough to justify that cost? Is it reasonable? Is that cost reasonable for what we received? Is it allowable? So is it even something that the law allows under a PREA spending, or is it some other something, right? And is it necessary? Is the cost necessary for the individual to access the service? So that's the lens that we have to put on all of our spending throughout VR, including these PREA contracts and all of the supplies and the travel and the everything, the Weeble wages that go along with it. Now, Weeble wages are a little bit debatable because necessary isn't, they aren't necessary actually, but they are a perk that's allowable that we're trying to get right. Next slide. So I wanted to pull out a couple of different pieces that are within our contract that apply to Weeble, work-based learning experiences. And I don't know how many of you get in and read the contract or not, but somebody in your district has probably read it or is reading it, hopefully. These bullets are: prior to the arrangement or provision of any PREA, VR will authorize the service by determining need for the service and that the service is not duplicating any service customarily provided by or required by the local education agency responsible for the student. That's one. Next, student wages shall occur at a competitive integrated setting within the community. Okay, so notice that says within the community. We are trying to aim towards places that are in community and in integrated settings. There's a context that goes within that, but your youth service coordinator needs to weigh in on these settings and situations ahead of time to ensure that we're meeting those requirements. Next bullet says agency shall provide ODHS with student pay stubs for reimbursement of actual costs. A timesheet will not suffice. We need to see the actual amount paid. So we've received in evidence sometimes like a student sign-in sheet, like their timesheet, right? That they're just clocking in and out. But what we actually have to have is that pay stub so that we know exactly how much the student was paid and we can show that we're only reimbursing for the actual cost. The pay stub, the amount, it can include, you know, some districts are using like a payroll service or some of those additional costs, and that's okay too, but we have to see what the district has paid, and then we can only reimburse for those exact costs. Next slide. Okay, it also says service hours provided shall be monitored to assure service equity among all students who request pre-ed. What does this mean? What this means is we want to make sure that as many students as possible are receiving pre-eds, right? A huge piece of this contract was making sure more students, that we're kind of breaking away of that concept of student base and we're getting smaller doses of intermittent services to a larger range of students. We want to see this with Webull too. So we don't want to see long-term paid Webull experiences necessarily, right? So our youth service coordinators are monitoring to make sure that these are being shared equitably among the possible number of students who might be able to get them. Most of you, when you applied for the contract, gave some pretty good detail about what you had in mind for Webull wages. That's all part of our contract milieu that we look back to and say, like, what did you say you were going to do? Are you doing that? So we look at that check and balance and everything as well. At any time during the agreed period, the agreement period, so that's our contract period, VR may implement new, additional, or adjusted planning and reporting requirements in order to address policy and internal control updates or additional federal requirements. So that's kind of a disclaimer that, you know, if RSA sees something and they're like, got to change that now, that we would change it. That has not happened, but it is a reminder that they are continuing to see everything that we do and ask questions and asking for us to hold a standard. And I was just explaining this morning to somebody else that actually, because they're like, well, do you think they're actually going to go through your financial record? Like, what's happening? When we're in corrective action, we're changing everything on the front end. We're changing our policy, our practice, our contracts. They want to see us go through the cycle and they want to see us implement our internal control. And then they want to see our financial records to make sure that we've done the things we said we were going to do. So it's a several year situation that we're held to. And then the last bullet is VR has the right to limit or terminate hours of pre-eds per category per student within the agreement based on progress reported, continued analysis, and determination of need. So that one is just to say that, like, while we put some buffers into the contract for our own, I mean, just for our own viability and trying to set everybody up for success, that if we're looking and it's looking like somebody has kind of received enough benefit, or if it's inequitable, that VR does have the right to limit or terminate those hours. Of course, we want to be talking with you way ahead before that happens, but this is just about being open about all of those little bits and pieces within the contract. I say all this and share it now so that if you're like, oh boy, well, I was planning on having somebody in a 12-week Webull, I should probably talk to my youth service coordinator about that ahead of time so that they know and they can understand and do all the determinations that we have to do. We have to make sure it's in an integrated setting. We have to make sure that it's not a duplication of what the school should be doing. We have to make sure all these different things, right? So the bottom line takeaway with this part is talk to your youth service coordinator about intensive Webull stuff that you may have going on. Next slide. Okay, there is a separate requirement for requesting Weeble wages. That's been confusing to some people. So we wanted to show you on the dashboard. You do have to go in and request. So even though work-based learning has been approved as a pre-et for a student, you must go in and do this additional step. This additional step, which is a little form in the dashboard, helps us determine that DRAN standard ahead of time so that everybody knows what to expect. Will it be well documented? Is it reasonable? Is it allowable? Is it necessary? The prior approval process documents that we're meeting the CIE, the Competitive Integrated Employment Standard, and we're not duplicating school services. Those are things we have to do. We have to document that we're doing them. The form is how we document, and the form and the approval process within the dashboard is how we document that. Wages will not be reimbursed for more wages or hourly rate than what was approved. So we know it's been a messy little kind of a start to the contract. In a few places, we've run into some things and hiccups. I'm here to tell you today forward, this, we have to stick with what is approved in here, because I can picture on the back end when we're answering to our federal partners, oh, there's a discrepancy in what was approved here and paid, what happened. We're just not going to do that, right? Because this is the system we've built and we've got to stick with it. And the approval for paid Weeble wages is required in addition to the authorization for general Weeble. As I said, it's just a separate process. Approving wages separate from approving Weeble. Okay, next. Weeble in general, there's been some question just about like which hours might I be able to bill for? And so the pre-ets provider may bill for the time spent arranging the Weeble. Hopefully y'all know that. Time actively supporting the Weeble. Yep, that's a thumbs up. Time spent documenting Weeble outcomes. Yep. And when we say supporting Weeble, it's checking in with the employer, or it's, observing the student and taking data, or whatever it might be, right? Yes. Pre-ets provider may not bill for time that a student is participating in or completing any pre-ets independently, including Weeble. So if a student's out on a work-based learning experience and say it's a 3-week situation and you've set them up and you're with them the first day and then you set them free, you can't bill for those 3 weeks of the Weeble. They're independent. They're doing their own thing. So those are non-billable hours. Next slide. This one's mine too, right? Yes. Okay, so school-based businesses are another topic that continue to just initiate lots of questions and learning. So there are lots and lots and lots of contextual pieces, as you might imagine, when it comes to a student-run business or a school-based business. And some of the things that we consider when deciding if a school-based business is a pre-ed or not is which students will be utilizing the student business, right? Is it just pre-ed eligible students? Is it a larger context of students? One or other of those answers alone does not say yes, it's a pre-ed or not. It's all of these things in context, right? How many students will be accessing the student business? Who's deciding who gets the opportunity to participate? Is the school assigning them as a class, or is it something that they're popping into for something or another? Are they receiving credit for the class? Is it part of a student's schedule again, or is it something that they're pushing into? What's the purpose of the experience? Is it an integrated setting? So when you've got student-run businesses, school-run businesses going on, I bet everybody can guess what I'm going to say. Talk to your youth service coordinator. There's a lot of context involved in determining how we make sure that something is a pre-ets and how VR isn't paying for just, a typical student store in a school. And that will require some changes from past model because VR was definitely spending inappropriately in several places there. That's no secret. It's in the written report. Everybody can read it. Okay, next slide. I think that's it for me.
Hey, everybody.
All right.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yep.
We just had some general reminders to review, so I'll just go through those quickly. If the student is 18 plus and has no guardian, they need to sign the parent guardian signature line as well as the student signature line. So if you have a student signing for themselves, they need to sign that third page of the PREETS request form twice. And that's largely because that parent guardian signature line kind of covers our release of information piece to communicate with you, the district. So pretty essential that somebody be signing there. So that's just a reminder. We hate to have to send forms back for more signatures. The next one, the state student ID is not required. However, if you fill this section out, please ensure it is the state ID, not school ID. And we do see a lot of that. Usually the school IDs are like 8 digits, and I should know how many the state ID is. It's more like 11. I want to say 11.
School ID is 6 and state is 7 or 8.
Oh, what? I was way off. I look at those all day. Oh man. Okay. Anyway, make sure you have the official state student school state ID, and not the one that's assigned by the state by the local district, because that is not as helpful to us. And then let's see. Oh, and there's a chat. We'll talk about that update. Some of these things, it's true that we're talking about on the form, could be a little bit more clearly spelled out, but we have a ways to go before we're able to get a new version of the form. So next, oh, I got somebody on that needs a mute. I'm not quite sure who that is.
I got it.
Thank you, CJ. All right. Next reminder, if request is for a student in a transition program, please list school of record as well. So if you have somebody in an adult transition program, 18 to 21, please also list the high school that they had graduated out of on that modified, in addition to the transition program. All right, so that's the request forms. Next, we can move on to billing. So for billing, direct services are student specific. So just a general reminder, I think there's a big learning curve right now between coordinated and direct and what goes where. And one of the sort of general ways to think of it is that direct services are student specific. You're working with a particular student on one of the 5 PREETs, and really providing that individualized support, or potentially small group support for that individual. And they've been approved in the system, they're ready to go. The coordinated is non-student specific, and we see most of that kind of getting students into the door, into the program, using that coordinated time to do outreach to classrooms and identify students that might be interested in services, and help them and their families get the forms filled out, talking to teachers to help identify who might benefit in their classes, and figuring out what the teacher's providing, and then what could be a PREET that's not a duplication of that and an enhancement. So that's sort of the very general direct versus coordinated. And coordinated obviously also has the employer outreach component to it. And again, that it helps to think of that employer piece, student specific versus non-student specific. If you're kind of just meeting like at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, or you're connecting with local employers to see if they have any opportunities without a specific student in mind, but just relationship building with employers in the community, that's going to be coordinated time. However, if you have a specific student that's on a work-based learning experience, and that something's coming up and things aren't going well, and you're trying to triage that with the employer, now you're in that, okay, I'm directly providing a work-based learning experience for this student. That's going to be direct time. So we just wanted to highlight the general differences there, so that you don't get more emails about us asking you to resubmit things, which nobody wants. So, okay, that's what we had on billing. talking about confidentiality, proof of service. So one thing I think we've talked a fair amount on these calls and other places is sign-in sheets, the dreaded sign-in sheets. Sign-in sheets can work, but they have to be individual to a student. They can't be all the students participating in a group activity, because then we have a confidentiality problem. Because if you are uploading that as your proof, all of a sudden on one student's record, we have 10 other students' names. So with confidentiality and like something like a sign-in sheet, you could do a sign-in sheet, but it would have to be each student would have their own. And we've seen that in different forms. Like maybe there's a log that a student has that's just for them every time they meet with you, and they have a brief note about that, what they do. But we just can't use, because of confidentiality, group sign-ins. Whatever you're uploading into the system shouldn't have other students' names or information on it. It should be specific to the student that you're billing for. So there's that on confidentiality. Then the next piece on the request form: complete all required sections, including information regarding pre-ETs needed. I think we've seen some of like not the whole form uploaded into the system. So please upload the entire form so that we can have that in our database, in our records, rather than just like go ahead, Michelle.
Well, I was just going to say, and team chime in if I'm off here, but I don't know if people realize we have not been able to get the dashboard to feed into our Orca system automatically. So we're still doing double hand entry and double upload of everything that you all put in. So when you ask questions about how can this be more efficient, believe me, we feel it. But that form in particular is really important to be filled out completely, because that's what we then go and upload into Orca, our system, right? So I'm just saying that as a part of the why for this part, this particular piece.
Yeah, it's just thorough documentation on our site. That's a good point. So yeah, so please, like sometimes I've seen where somebody just uploads the signature page thinking, oh, that's all you really need is the signatures. Everything else is living in the dashboard. But like we say, for our records to sort of officially initiate and enroll that student in pre-ETs with VR, we'd like to have the entire pre-ETs request form. So I think that kind of does it for reminders. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Derek. So Francie, do you mind shutting down the recording? And we're going to head into questions. And again, like CJ said at the beginning, we're really going to try to take these on a regional basis. So if you could